if you don't mind. The first three individuals that are before us, the parents of Jordan Davis, Ms. Lucia McBath, and Mr. Ron Davis, if we can give them a little bit more time to share their thoughts, more than 2 minutes, I think, given the magnitude of the loss, I think 2 minutes is not enough. And if they so choose,
show that at Representative Williams' request will more than double that to 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Davis and Ms. McBath, you're recognized. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. My name is Lucia Holman McBath, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I am the mother of a young teenage boy that was gunned down by a man with anger in his heart and looking for some place to lodge it. My son, Jordan Davis, is a victim of senseless gun violence that has risen to epidemic proportions not only in the state of Florida, but nationwide. The day after Thanksgiving of 2012, a man named Michael Dunn drove his car into a gas station in Jacksonville, Florida, next to Jordan and 3 of his friends. A verbal altercation ensued between my son and Mr. Dunn over loud music. Moments later, angered and empowered by his gun and the protection of Florida's stand your ground laws, Michael Dunn, in what he claims is self-defense, opened fire on my son and his friends simply as they sat in their car. The barrage of bullets spraying the car hit my son 3 times, causing his death. Suffice it to say, no guns, no alcohol, nor drugs were found on the boys or in their car. There was nothing that warranted Michael Dunn feeling threatened enough to open fire on a group of innocent teenaged boys. My grief is unbearable at times, and I pray that no parent ever has to endure the burial of their child. That is why I appear before you today. I am here as a face of the countless victims of gun violence. I am here to fight for common sense gun safety legislation that protects the lives of all citizens. You, as our elected governing body, have a responsibility to prevent future tragedies like this from becoming commonplace in the state of Florida. Under Florida's current stand your ground law, there is no duty for a citizen to retreat when they believe they are confronted with deadly force or imminent danger. This current stand your ground doctrine relieves a person of any responsibility in proving they had a reasonable level of fear to use deadly force. In my son's case, Michael Dunn may unapologetically walk away, excused from any wrongdoing by a law that allows people to shoot first and ask questions later. This stand your ground statute, as loosely as it is used in Florida, has become a critical means of conflict resolution over reasonable common sense solutions. Florida has become the poster child for senseless acts of gun violence. I believe without a doubt that this current culture of gun violence is not what our founding fathers intended for our great nation. Under this current law, if it is not amended or repealed, I am afraid Florida will find itself identified by this country for its lack of justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and you're recognized.
Thank you. Recognizing the chair and the vice chair, thank you for having us up here today. One word that screams out at me in the aftermath of my son's death is reasonable. I believe all of you here, just by being in this position to judge and to create law, you're reasonable people. I believe that. I listened to you today. I believe you all have good points. You're reasonable people. But you have to understand that the people you represent in your districts are not all reasonable people. And so the word reasonable, you have to take that into account when you make laws. Don't make laws for people that have good jobs and have nice suits and nice ties and so on and so forth. We have a lot of people that are unreasonable. And when you have loopholes in laws, they take advantage of that. And that's what we're looking at Stand Your Ground. The person that murdered my son, he felt emboldened by these loopholes that as long as I feel threatened, then I can take action. He even rolled down the window of his car to engage the young kids in the car twice, to say, do what I tell you to do. And when they did not do what he told them to do, he thought that would be okay to get a licensed handgun and shoot and murder my son. And in addition to that, as the car was trying to get away from this madman, he shoots 2 more shots in the flush back of the vehicle, just for good measure. And then he goes to a hotel, orders pizza, wakes up in the morning and finds that he has murdered my son. No 911 call. Hops in his car and drives 2.5 miles to Satellite Beach. Everything is fine. You murdered a kid, we'll talk about it when we get home. And this is how some of the unreasonable people use this law. And so I agree with a lot of things that were said here about it being rewritten, and I don't know whether being repealed or rewritten is the thing to do, but I know one thing, that when you think that people are reasonable and you give them an out, you give them a way to say, if there are no witnesses, I can do this, and all they're going to ask for is what is in the mind of the shooter, because the victim has no story. So they're going to make up the story that they want to make up. And so that's what you have to think of when you make these laws and you rewrite these laws, whether you have to repeal it or just rewrite it. You have to think of, we're looking at the mind of the shooter. When you were little and your mother told you to do something and you didn't do it right or whatever, or your big brother did something, you always made up a story to make yourself look good. You made up a story. Well, that's how criminals act. That's how people that do unlawful acts, they act the same way. They make up stories to justify why they did something. And so when you have this no duty to retreat, sometimes it's better to retreat, because if you have 2 individuals standing on a lawful place doing lawful things and they get into an argument and they both have guns, what do you have? You have the law between them. And if the law doesn't separate them and say retreat from this action, and 2 people go home to their families and they're safe with their families and they say to their wives, we had an argument, but you know what, it's over now. I'm at home, I'm safe. But if you tell them as the law in the middle and says, you know what, neither one of you have a duty to retreat, go ahead and hash it out, and 2 people maybe are dead, does that solve the problem? Is that what Florida wants to be known for? I think not. So when you look at these bills, please, for my sake and the sake of my family, the sake of Jordan Davis, look at the word reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you both for being here.
We'll hear from John Phillips. Mr. Phillips, you're recognized.
Thank you so much. My name is John Phillips. I'm an attorney in Jacksonville, Florida. I have the pleasure of representing the Davis family and many other voiceless. The reason they're voiceless is because they can no longer talk, because somebody has looked at Stand Your Ground as an entitlement. It's not a value. It's not a selfish law like Representative Harrell, which we all want. We all want to say we've got to protect ourselves. What happens if the bad guy is coming at me? What happens if Martians land and come in this? And we've grown up to fear Martians or people of another color. What happens? And so we have this entitlement under Stand Your Ground to pull out a gun based upon what's in our brain and be judged on that circumstance. That shouldn't be the case. We've talked about a lot of federal amendments. Well, my favorite federal amendment is the 6th Amendment, the right to a trial by jury. And whether in this form or another form, we all need to address the problems with Stand Your Ground. We have to. We have to promote us all being reasonable. And me protecting your life and considering even the lives that maybe, I think, may not add up as much to mine. they value just as much to their parents and their children. And so I speak about this issue a lot, and this is my last little piece, and I ask people to think of stand your ground. Give me one word that stands for stand your ground. And had I asked Barack Obama in 2005 what that word was, it would have been very pro stand your ground because he voted for it as a state senator. If I asked John McCain when he voted for it in Arizona, or when he supported it when it came through, I think he was in the Fed then, he would have been pro. And I hope sometime in the next couple of years, those of you that will say something positive about stand your ground now will realize that we have an epidemic, we have a problem, and it's causing an entitlement to kill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Rumberger, I cannot tell from your form whether you're a proponent or opponent of the bill. Is Ms. Rumberger here? Are you a proponent or opponent? Oh, well then we're in order to take your testimony now. You're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Debbie Harrison Rumberger, and I can't tell you how important this issue is. This isn't just about the right to bear arms or the right to defend oneself. This is an issue that you can very plainly see in every way that it plays out, including the demographic background of the speakers that come for you, either before or against, the way that we have segregated ourselves in this room, the number of security people and the number of police that we have at the Capitol for this meeting, that our state has a real problem when it comes to how we see racial equity in our state. The movement of people that are most affected and are calling out to you to fix this problem are the ones who are afraid for their lives. And yet it is we, the white people, who have enacted these laws because we are afraid of the black youth, particularly the black male youth. We have got to come to terms in this state with the fact that we are in the 21st century. We don't want Jim Crow here. We don't want discrimination here. We want a broad, engaged, diverse population that works well and supports each other. When our children, black or white, organize themselves with the strength and the perseverance that these kids have, we have a moral responsibility to find a solution to assure their safety. And I call on every one of you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.